Yes? Keith has one. All right. I'll second that. I can gut a deer. Changing a diaper makes me want to gag. So, yeah, there's something about that. They are more nurturing, which is important, particularly for the church. That the church recognize that women do have a sensitivity to that men don't always have, and draw on that when it's necessary. You know, parish nurses and that sort of thing that recognize people's needs, deaconesses that are out there doing the hands-on work, helping people with regular physical needs. Yeah, women do have a better sense of that. What else? What else is different between the gifts God gives men and women? But aggressiveness, is that a gift? It is. It is. God has given men an aggressiveness. Now, that can be used in a positive way to defend a family, to fight wars and keep the family safe. It can turn bad when it's not properly harnessed, but there is a difference. Teenage men have more accidents and behind the wheel because of that aggressiveness. Men are more protective, which is exactly why women shouldn't be in combat. It's not that a woman can't pull a trigger and shoot somebody. It's that men die when they're around women in combat because they're busy trying to protect them instead of fight the enemy. And that's been proven in studies. It's all sorts of things. The care of children. The relation between the sexes, too, and how they're different is an important thing that children need to see so they know how the sexes interact. The idea of sex education, I think, outside of being gross, I think is unnecessary in a Christian home. I don't think you ever have to have a birds and the bees talk with your kid as a Christian. I think if your children just see you interacting as husband and wife and see how a man should treat a woman and a woman should respect a man, that's all the education the kids need. Just a loving, compassionate, yielding of one another to the other relationship. The gifts are different that God gives. And when expressed together, it's a beautiful thing. But we're in a culture, again, obsessed by the idea of equality. And there is a way that churches have seized on this idea of spiritual gifts and twisted it in a way that I don't think is particularly healthy. I had an uncle in a church in Milwaukee area whose job with his church was to do spiritual gifts inventories. Let me show you what one of those things looks like. A spiritual gift inventory is something when new members joined their church, they sat down with them and went through this thing to determine what gifts God had given them that the church can exploit, is basically what it was. And they tried to determine what somebody is good at so that the church can draw from them, use them. Now the thinking is it's using them in a positive way, helping them express the gifts God gives, and that's a good thing. And it is. It's good that we use the gifts God gives us, and we all have different gifts. But let's just see if there's anything in this that sounds in any way problematic. This is a spiritual gifts inventory. A short form. Long forms are dozens of pages. But at any rate, first of all, every one of the letters after the question corresponds to a different, see I cut it off here, you can't even see the bottom. Things like Giving, administration, it says, if you're good at giving. Yeah, who's not? Yeah, here's $5. Not everybody can do that. Teaching, exhortation, mercy, prophecy, serving. And again, who can't serve or show mercy? And that's kind of the problem with this. But at any rate, so each letter you put a check by corresponds to a gift. And these are the gifts they've defined. And then you add it all up at the end. If you get a 3, 4, or 5 after your letter, that means you got that spiritual gift. You didn't get a 3, 4, or 5, you don't have any. So anyway, let's just go through a couple questions. I prefer ministering by myself rather than in a group. And this evidently somehow goes to giving because it involves you contributing your material resources. People say I'm impulsive and direct. Oh, sorry, the G went to something else. A went to that. My financial resources are above average. Now, there's the big question. How much money do you got that we can take? And that may sound crass, but I have had several people that take adult instruction, so-called, in LCMS churches who say it was 3 lessons long and 2 of the lessons were on giving and money. 4, I like to counsel people on a short-term basis. Yeah, of course, everybody loves to share other people's misery. 5, I'm a task-oriented person. 6, I love directing other people's work. I like that one. I like standing on the sidelines and telling people what to do. So this is the idea of a spiritual gift, and this is how they're trying to coax out of you what you're good at with questions like that. What issues do you see with something like this? Yeah. What if you go through this and you don't check any of them? Man, I shouldn't even be here. So, yeah?
Or the other way, you say you're terrific.
This is the other thing these do. This separates people. Because I got a 5 on this line, you got a 3. I'm in charge of this committee because I scored higher. Absolutely, it separates people. Are these so-called spiritual gifts biblical? Giving? Well, that's kind of biblical. Administration, it kind of depends how you wind up defining that. Leading and communicating in a way that works harmoniously to reach goals for God's purpose. It sounds so warm and wonderful. Teaching, that's biblical. Exhortation, well, yeah, that's biblical, but you could certainly twist that. Mercy, that's biblical. Prophecy, yeah. So, they're all kind of turned to sound biblical, but in some senses, it's just plain not. It's sort of exploiting what you have in such a way that the church gets something out of it. It's like you as a member really don't mean much to us unless you've got something significant to contribute. It turns hearers, receivers of grace, into an inadequate status. You've got to be a contributor at a certain level to be worth anything. But if you're only here to receive grace, somehow that's not enough. And I think this really is the ultimate bottom line with things like this when we try and do inventories of what spiritual gifts God gives us so we can feel like we contribute and we're positive and all of that. What if I'm just here because I know I'm a miserable sinner and I need forgiveness? Isn't that what church should be about? Didn't Jesus say, come, I have a burden and a heavy laden and he's going to give me rest? That's why I'm here. And as Jesus redeems us and forgives us and works in us and gives us his Holy Spirit, you don't need an inventory to figure out what you can do. That's what the Holy Spirit does. He directs us. There's just something askew in all of this that just isn't right with what focus of church should be. As I said, my uncle did this for a living for years. Hales Corners Lutheran Church. You know that one? Yeah. Church specializing in stealing other people's members. So at any rate, this is some of what's out there. And when we talk giving of talents and this and expectations, these are the sorts of hurdles we have to deal with in the world and the way sometimes it gets twisted. Now, moving on. And then as we said, the other thing, the church elevating some gifts over others. So if you scored high in the prophesy, somehow or another, that seems a whole lot more impressive than somebody who scores low in administration. So division rather than bringing together. Verse 14 from Luke is very different than anything in Matthew. It's almost an aside, a break from the normal flow of the parable. But the citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, "We will not have this man to reign over us." And again, Luke's gospel seems to be more of a commentary of Jesus' interaction with the Pharisees and the scribes and the Jewish leaders, because that is exactly what they did to him. All right, back in Matthew, going on with the parable. Verse 16. Then he who had received 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5 talents. And likewise he who had received 2 gained 2 more also. But he who had received 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his Lord's money. After a long time the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them. So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents besides them. His Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. He also, who had received 2 talents, came and said, Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents. Look, I have gained 2 more talents besides them. His Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter the joy of your Lord. All right, Luke's version is this. And so it was when he returned, having received the kingdom, he then commanded these servants to whom he had given the money to be called to him, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. Then came the first, saying, Master, your mina has earned 10 minas. And he said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Because you were faithful in a very little, have authority over 10 cities. The second came, saying, Master, your mina has earned